100 Proofs the Earth is Not a Globe by William Carpenter. 1. The aeronaut can see for himself that Earth is a plane. The appearance presented to him, even at the highest elevation he has ever attained, is that of a concave surface, this being exactly what is to be expected of a surface that is truly level, since it is the nature of level surfaces to appear to rise to a level with the eye of the observer. This is ocular demonstration and proof that Earth is not a globe. 2. Whenever experiments have been tried on the surface of standing water, this surface has always been found to be level. If the Earth were a globe, the surface of all standing water would be convex. This is an experimental proof that Earth is not a globe. 3. Surveyors' operations in the construction of railroads, tunnels, or canals are conducted without the slightest allowance being made for curvature, although it is taught that this so-called allowance is absolutely necessary. This is a cutting proof that Earth is not a globe. 4. There are rivers that flow for hundreds of miles towards the level of the sea without falling more than a few feet, notably the Nile, which in 1,000 miles falls but a foot. A level expanse of this extent is quite incompatible with the idea of the Earth's convexity. It is, therefore, a reasonable proof that Earth is not a globe. 5. The lights which are exhibited in lighthouses are seen by navigators at distances at which, according to the scale of the supposed curvature given by astronomers, they ought to be many hundreds of feet, in some cases down below the line of sight. For instance, the light at Cape Hatteras is seen at such a distance, 40 miles, that according to the theory, it ought to be 900 feet higher above the level of the sea than it absolutely is, in order to be visible. This is a conclusive proof that there is no curvature on the surface of the sea, the level of the sea, ridiculous though it is to be under the necessity of proving it at all, but it is, nevertheless, a conclusive proof that the Earth is not a globe. 6. If we stand on the sands of the seashore and watch a ship approach us, we shall find that she will apparently rise to the extent of her own height, nothing more. If we stand upon an eminence, the same law operates still, and it is but the law of perspective which causes objects as they approach us to appear to increase in size until we can see them, close to us, the size they are in fact. That there is no other rise than the one spoken of is plain from the fact that no matter how high we ascend above the level of the sea, the horizon rises on and still on as we rise, so that it is always on a level with the eye, though it be 200 miles away, as seen by Mr. J. Glaisher of England from Mr. Coxwell's balloon, so that a ship 5 miles away may be imagined to be coming up the imaginary downward curve of the Earth's surface, but if we merely ascend a hill, such as Federal Hill, Baltimore, we may see 25 miles away, on a level with the eye, that is, 20 miles level distance beyond the ship that we vainly imagine to be rounding the curve and coming up. This is a plain proof that the Earth is not a globe. 7. If we take a trip down the Chesapeake Bay in the daytime, we may see for ourselves the utter fallacy of the idea that when a vessel appears hull down, as it is called, it is because the hull is behind the water. For vessels have been seen, and may often be seen again presenting the appearance spoken of, and away, far away, beyond those vessels, and at the same moment, the level shoreline, with its accompanying complement of tall trees towering up in perspective over the heads of the hull-down ships. Since, then, the idea will not stand its ground when the facts rise up against it, and it is a piece of the popular theory, the theory is a contemptible piece of business, and we may easily wring from it a proof that the Earth is not a globe. 8. If the Earth were a globe, a small model globe would be the very best, because the truest, thing for the navigator to take to sea with him. But such a thing as that is not known. With such a toy as a guide, the mariner would wreck his ship, of a certainty. This is a proof that Earth is not a globe. 9. As mariners take to sea with them charts constructed as though the sea were a level surface, however, these charts may err as to the true form of this level surface taken as a whole, it is clear, as they find them answer their purpose tolerably well, and only tolerably well, for many ships are wrecked owing to the error of which we speak, that the surface of the sea is as it is taken to be, whether the captain of the ship supposes the earth to be a globe or anything else. Thus, then, we draw from the common system of plain sailing a practical proof that earth is not a globe. 10. That the mariner's compass points north and south at the same time is a fact as indisputable as that 2 and 2 makes 4. But that this would be impossible if the thing were placed on a globe, with north and south at the center of opposite hemispheres, is a fact that does not figure in the schoolbooks, though very easily seen, and it requires no lengthy train of reasoning to bring out of it a pointed proof that the earth. 11. As the mariner's compass points north and south at one time, and as the north to which it is attracted is that part of the earth situated where the North Star is in the zenith, it follows that there is no south point or pole, but that, while the center is north, a vast circumference must be south in its whole extent. This is a proof that the earth is not a globe. 12. As we have seen that there is really no south point or pole, but an infinity of points forming together a vast circumference, the boundary of the known world, with its battlements of icebergs, which bid defiance to man's onward course in a southerly direction, so there can be no east or west points, just as there is no yesterday and no tomorrow. In fact, as there is one point that is fixed, the north, it is impossible for any other point to be fixed likewise. East and west are, therefore, merely directions at right angles with the north and south line, and as the south point of the compass shifts round to all parts of the circular boundary, as it may be carried round the central north, so the directions east and west crossing this line, continued, form a circle at any latitude. A westerly circumnavigation, therefore, is a going round with the North Star continually on the right hand, and an easterly circumnavigation is performed only when the reverse condition of things is maintained, the North Star being on the left hand as the journey is made. These facts, taken together, form a beautiful proof that the earth is not a globe. 13. As the mariner's compass points north and south at one and the same time, and a meridian is a north and south line, it follows that meridians can be no other than straight lines. But since all meridians on a globe are semicircles, it is an incontrovertible proof that the earth is not a globe. 14. Parallels of latitude only, of all imaginary lines on the surface of the earth, are circles, which increase progressively from the northern center to the southern circumference. The mariner's course in the direction of any one of these concentric circles is his longitude, the degree of which increase to such an extent beyond the equator, going southwards, that hundreds of vessels have been wrecked because of the false idea created by the untruthfulness of the charts and the globular theory together, causing the sailor to be continually getting out of his reckoning. With a map of the earth in its true form, all difficulty is done away with, and ships may be conducted anywhere with perfect safety. This, then, is a very important practical proof that the earth is not a globe. 15. The idea that, instead of sailing horizontally round the earth, ships are taken down one side of a globe, then underneath, and are brought up on the other side to get home again, is, except as a mere dream, impossible and absurd. And since there are neither impossibilities nor absurdities in the simple matter of circumnavigation, it stands without argument, a proof that the earth is not a globe. 16. If the earth were a globe, the distance round its surface at, say, 45 degrees south latitude could not possibly be any greater than it is at the same latitude north. But since it is found by navigators to be twice the distance, to say the least of it, or double the distance it ought to be according to the globular theory, it is a proof that the earth is not a globe. 17. Human beings require a level surface on which to live, that, in its general character, shall be level. And since the omniscient Creator must have been perfectly acquainted with the requirements of his creatures, it follows that being an all-wise Creator, he has met them thoroughly. This is a theological proof that the earth is not a globe. 18. The best possessions of man are his senses, and when he uses them all, he will not be deceived in his survey of nature. It is only when some one faculty or other is neglected or abused that he is deluded. Every man in full command of his senses knows that a level surface is a flat or horizontal one, but astronomers tell us that the true level is the curved surface of a globe. They know that man requires a level surface on which to live, so they give him one in name which is not one in fact. Since this is the best that astronomers with their theoretical science can do for their fellow creatures, deceive them, it is clear that things are not as they say they are, and in short, it is a proof that earth is not a globe. 19. Every man in his senses goes the most reasonable way to work to do a thing. Now astronomers, one after another, following a leader, while they are telling us that earth is a globe, are cutting off the upper half of this supposititious globe in their books, and in this way forming the level surface on which they describe man as living and moving. Now if the earth were really a globe, this would be just the most unreasonable and suicidal mode of endeavoring to show it, so that, unless theoretical astronomers are all out of their senses together, it is clearly a proof that the earth is not a globe. 20. The common sense of man tells him, if nothing else told him, that there is an up and a down in nature, even as regards the heavens and the earth, but the theory of modern astronomers necessitates the conclusion that there is not. Therefore, the theory of the astronomers is opposed to common sense, yes, and to inspiration, and this is a common sense proof that the earth is not a globe. 21. Man's experience tells him that he is not constructed like the flies that can live and move upon the ceiling of a room with as much safety as on the floor, and since the modern theory of a planetary earth necessitates a crowd of theories to keep company with it, and one of them is that men are really bound to the earth by a force which fastens them to it, like needles round a spherical lodestone, a theory perfectly outrageous and opposed to all human experience, it follows that, unless we can trample upon common sense and ignore the teachings of experience, we have an evident proof that the earth is not a globe. 22. God's truth never requires a falsehood to help it along. Mr. Proctor, in his Lessons, says, men have been able to go round the earth in several directions. Now in this case, the word several will imply more than two, unquestionably, whereas it is utterly impossible to circumnavigate the earth in any other way than an easterly or westerly direction, and the fact is perfectly consistent and clear in its relation to earth as a plane. Now since astronomers would not be so foolish as to damage a good cause by misrepresentation, it is presumptive evidence that their cause is a bad one, and a proof that the earth is not a globe. 23. If astronomical works be searched through and through, there will not be found a single instance of a bold, unhesitating, or manly statement respecting a proof of the earth's rotundity. Proctor speaks of proofs which serve to show that the earth is not flat, and says that man finds reason to think that the earth is not flat, and speaks of certain matters being explained by supposing that the earth is a globe, and says that people have assured themselves that it is a globe. But he says also that there is a most complete proof that the earth is a globe, just as though anything in the world could possibly be wanted but a proof that proves and settles the whole question. This, however, all the money in the United States Treasury would not buy, and, unless the astronomers are all so rich that they don't want the cash, it is a sterling proof that the earth is not a globe. 24. When a man speaks of a most complete thing amongst several other things which claim to be what that thing is, it is evident that they must fall short of something which the most complete thing possesses. And when it is known that the most complete thing is an entire failure, it is plain that the others, all and sundry, are worthless. Proctor's most complete proof that the earth is a globe lies in what he calls the fact that distances from place to place agree with calculation. But since the distance round the earth at 45 degrees south of the equator is twice the distance it would be on a globe, it follows that what the greatest astronomer of the age calls a fact is not a fact, that his most complete proof is a most complete failure, and that he might as well have told us at once that he has no proof to give us at all. Now, since if the earth be a globe there would necessarily be piles of proofs of it all around us, it follows that when astronomers, with all of their ingenuity, are utterly unable to point one out, to say nothing about picking one up, that they give us a proof that Earth is not a globe. 25. The surveyor's plans in relation to the laying of the first Atlantic telegraph cable showed that in 1,665 miles, from Valentia, Ireland to St. John's, Newfoundland, the surface of the Atlantic Ocean is a level surface, not the astronomer's level either. The authoritative drawings published at the time are a standing evidence of the fact and form a practical proof that Earth is not a globe. 26. If the Earth were a globe, it would, if we take Valentia to be the place of departure, curvate downwards in the 1,665 miles across the Atlantic to Newfoundland, according to the astronomer's own tables, more than 300 miles. But as the surface of the Atlantic does not do so, the fact of its levelness having been clearly demonstrated by telegraph cable surveyors, it follows that we have a grand proof that Earth is not a globe. 27. Astronomers, in their consideration of the supposed curvature of the Earth, have carefully avoided the taking of the view of the question which, if anything were needed to do so, would show its utter absurdity. It is this: if, instead of taking our ideal point of the departure to be at Valentia, we consider ourselves at St. John's, the 1,665 miles of water between us and Valentia would just as well curvate downwards as it did in the other case. Now, since the direction in which the earth is said to curvate is interchangeable, depending indeed upon the position occupied by a man upon its surface, the thing is utterly absurd, and it follows that the theory is an outrage, and that the earth does not curvate at all, an evident proof that the earth is not a globe. 28. Astronomers are in the habit of considering 2 points on the earth's surface, without, it seems, any limit as to the distance that lies between them, as being on a level, and the intervening section, even though it be an ocean, as a vast hill of water. The Atlantic Ocean, in taking this view of the matter, would form a hill of water more than 100 miles high. The idea is simply monstrous, and could only be entertained by scientists whose whole business is made up of materials of the same description, and it certainly requires no argument to deduce from such science as this a satisfactory proof that the earth is not a globe. 29. If the earth were a globe, it would unquestionably have the same general characteristics, no matter its size, as a small globe that may be stood upon a table. As the small globe has top, bottom, and sides, so must also the large one, no matter how large it be. But as the earth, which is supposed to be a large globe, has no sides or bottom, as the small globe has, the conclusion is irresistible that it is a proof that the earth is not a globe. 30. If the earth were a globe, an observer who should ascend above its surface would have to look downwards at the horizon, if it be possible to conceive of a horizon at all under such circumstances, even as astronomical diagrams indicate, at angles varying from 10 to nearly 50 degrees below the horizontal line of sight. It is just as absurd as it would be to be taught that when we look at a man full in the face we are looking down at his feet. But as no observer in the clouds, or upon any eminence of the earth, has ever had to do so, it follows that the diagrams spoken of are imaginary and false, that the theory which requires such things to prop it up is equally airy and untrue, and that we have a substantial proof that the earth is not a globe. 31. If the earth were a globe, it would certainly have to be as large as it is said to be, 25,000 miles in circumference. Now the thing which is called a proof of the earth's roundness, and which is presented to children at school, is that if we stand on the seashore, we may see the ships as they approach us, absolutely coming up, and that, as we are able to see the highest parts of these ships first, it is because the lower parts are behind the Earth's curve. Now, since if this were the case, that is, if the lower parts of these ships were behind a hill of water at all, the size of the Earth, indicated by such a curve as this, would be so small that it would only be big enough to hold the people of a parish if they could all get round it, instead of the nations of the world. It follows that the idea is preposterous, that the appearance is due to another and to some reasonable cause, and that instead of being a proof of the globular form of the Earth, it is a proof that the Earth is not a globe. 32. It is often said that if the Earth were flat, we could see all over it. This is the result of ignorance. If we stand on the level surface of a plain or a prairie and take notice, we shall find that the horizon is formed at about 3 miles all around us. That is, the ground appears to rise up until, at that distance, it seems on a level with the eye line, or line of sight. Consequently, objects no higher than we stand, say 6 feet, and which are at that distance, 3 miles, have reached the vanishing point, and are beyond the sphere of our unaided vision. This is the reason why the hull of a ship disappears, in going away from us, before the sails, and, instead of there being about it the faintest shadow of evidence of the Earth's rotundity, it is a clear proof that Earth is not a globe. 33. If the Earth were a globe, people, except those on the top, would certainly have to be fastened to its surface by some means or other, whether by the attraction of astronomers or by some other undiscovered and undiscoverable process. But as we know that we simply walk on its surface without any other aid than that which is necessary for locomotion on a plane, it follows that we have herein a conclusive proof that Earth is not a globe. 34. If the Earth were a globe, there certainly would be, if we could imagine the thing to be peopled all around, antipodes, people who, says the dictionary, living exactly on the opposite side of the globe to ourselves, have their feet opposite to ours, people who are hanging heads downwards whilst we are standing heads up. But since the theory allows us to travel to those parts of the Earth where the people are said to be heads downwards, and still to fancy ourselves to be heads upwards, and our friends whom we have left behind us to be heads downwards, it follows that the whole thing is a myth, a dream, a delusion, and a snare, and instead of there being any evidence at all in this direction to substantiate the popular theory, it is a plain proof that the Earth is not a globe. 35. If we examine a true picture of the distant horizon, or the thing itself, we shall find that it coincides exactly with a perfectly straight and level line. Now, since there could be nothing of the kind on a globe, and we find it to be the case all over the Earth, it is a proof that the Earth is not a globe. 36. If we take a journey down the Chesapeake Bay by night, we shall see the light exhibited at Sharp's Island for an hour before the steamer gets to it. We may take up a position on the deck so that the rail of the vessel's side will be in line with the light, and in the line of sight, and we shall find that in the whole journey the light will not vary in the slightest degree in its apparent elevation. But, say that a distance of 13 miles has been traversed, the astronomer's theory of curvature demands a difference, one way or the other, in the apparent elevation of the light of 112 feet 8 inches. Since, however, there is not a difference of 112 hairs' breadths, we have a plain proof that the water of the Chesapeake Bay is not curved, which is a proof that the Earth is not a globe. 37. If the Earth were a globe, there would, very likely, be, for nobody knows, 6 months' day and 6 months' night at the Arctic and Antarctic regions, as astronomers dare to assert there is, for their theory demands it. But as this fact, the 6 months' day and 6 months' night, is nowhere found but in the Arctic regions, it agrees perfectly with everything else that we know about the Earth as a plane, and whilst it overthrows the accepted theory, it furnishes a striking proof that the Earth is not a globe. 38. When the sun crosses the equator in March and begins to circle round the heavens in north latitude, the inhabitants of high northern latitudes see him skimming round their horizon and forming the break of their long day in a horizontal course, not disappearing again for 6 months as he rises higher and higher in the heavens, whilst he makes his 24-hour circle until June, when he begins to descend and goes on until he disappears beyond the horizon in September. Thus, in the northern regions, they have that which the travelers call the midnight sun, as he sees that luminary at a time when in his more southern latitude it is always midnight. If, then, for 1/2 of the year we may see for ourselves the sun making horizontal circles round the heavens, it is presumptive evidence that for the other half-year he is doing the same, although beyond the boundary of our vision. This being a proof that earth is a plane, is therefore a proof that the earth is not a globe. 39. We have an abundance of evidence that the sun moves daily round and over the earth in circles concentric with the northern region over which hangs the North Star. But since the theory of the earth being a globe is necessarily connected with the theory of its motion round the sun in a yearly orbit, it falls to the ground when we bring forward the evidence of which we speak, and in doing so forms a proof that the earth is not a globe. 40. The Suez Canal, which joins the Red Sea with the Mediterranean, is about 100 miles long. It forms a straight and level surface of water from one end to the other, and no allowance for any supposed curvature was made in its construction. It is a clear proof that the earth is not a globe. 41. When astronomers assert that it is necessary to make allowance for curvature in canal construction, it is, of course, in order that in their idea a level cutting may be had for the water. How flagrantly, then, do they contradict themselves when they say that the curved surface of earth is a true level? What more can they want for a canal than a true level? Since they contradict themselves in such an elementary point as this, it is an evidence that the whole thing is a delusion, and we have a proof that the earth is not a globe. 42. It is certain that the theory of the earth's rotundity and that of its mobility must stand or fall together. A proof, then, of its immobility is virtually a proof of its non-rotundity. Now, that the earth does not move, either on an axis or in an orbit round the sun, or anything else, is easily proven. If the earth went through space at the rate of 1100 miles in a minute of time, as astronomers teach us, in a particular direction, there would unquestionably be a difference in the result of firing off a projectile in that direction and in a direction the opposite of that one. But as, in fact, there is not the slightest difference in any such case, it is clear that any alleged motion of the earth is disproved, and that, therefore, we have a proof that the earth is not a globe. 43. The circumstances which attend bodies which are caused merely to fall from a great height prove nothing as to the motion or stability of the earth, since the object, if it be on a thing that is in motion, will participate in that motion. But if an object be thrown upwards from a body at rest, and again from a body in motion, the circumstances attending its descent will be very different. In the former case, it will fall, if thrown vertically upwards, at the place from whence it was projected. In the latter case, it will fall behind. The moving body from which it is thrown will leave it in the rear. Now fix a gun, muzzle upwards, accurately in the ground, fire off a projectile, and it will fall by the gun. If the earth traveled 1100 miles a minute, the projectile would fall behind the gun, in the opposite direction to that of the supposed motion. Since then this is not the case, in fact, the earth's fancied motion is negatived, and we have a proof that the earth is not a globe. 44. It is in evidence that if a projectile be fired from a rapidly moving body in an opposite direction to that in which the body is going, it will fall short of the distance at which it would reach the ground if fired in the direction of motion. Now, since the earth is said to move at the rate of 19 miles in a second of time, from west to east, it would make all the difference imaginable if the gun were fired in an opposite direction. But, as in practice, there is not the slightest difference whichever way the thing may be done. We have a forcible overthrow of all fancies relative to the motion of the earth, and a striking proof that the earth is not a globe. 45. The Astronomer Royal of England, George B. Airy, in his celebrated work on astronomy, the Ipswich Lectures, says, "Jupiter is a large planet that turns on his axis. And why do not we turn? Of course, the common sense reply is, because the Earth is not a planet. When, therefore, an astronomer royal puts words in our mouth, wherewith we may overthrow the supposed planetary nature of the Earth, we have not far to go to pick up a proof that Earth is not a globe. 46. It has been shown that an easterly or westerly motion is necessarily a circular course round the central north. The only north point, or center of motion of the heavenly bodies known to man, is that formed by the North Star, which is over the central portion of the outstretched earth. When, therefore, astronomers tell us of a planet taking a westerly course round the sun, the thing is as meaningless to them as it is to us, unless they make the sun the northern center of motion, which they cannot do. Since, then, the motion which they tell us the planets have is, on the face of it, absurd, and since, as a matter of fact, the earth can have no absurd motion at all, it is clear that it cannot be what astronomers say it is, a planet. And if not a planet, it is a proof that Earth is not a globe. 47. In consequence of the fact being so plainly seen by everyone who visits the seashore, that the line of the horizon is a perfectly straight line, it becomes impossible for astronomers, when they attempt to convey, pictorially, an idea of the Earth's convexity, to do so with even a shadow of consistency, for they dare not represent the horizon as a curved line, so well known is it that it is a straight one. The greatest astronomer of the age, in page 15 of his Lessons, gives an illustration of a ship sailing away, as though she were rounding the top of a great hill of water, and there, of a truth, is the straight and level line of the horizon, clear along the top of the hill, from one side of the picture to the other. Now, if this picture were true in all its parts, and it is outrageously false in several, it would show that Earth is a cylinder, for the hill shown is simply up one side of the level horizontal line, and we are led to suppose down the other. Since then we have such high authority as Professor Richard A. Proctor that the Earth is a cylinder, it is certainly a proof that the Earth is not a globe. 48. In Mr. Proctor's Lessons in Astronomy, page 15, a ship is represented as sailing away from the observer, and it is given in 5 positions or distances away on its journey. Now in its first position, its mast appears above the horizon, and consequently higher than the observer's line of vision. But in its second and third positions, representing the ship as further and further away, it is drawn higher and still higher up above the line of the horizon. Now it is utterly impossible for a ship to sail away from an observer under the conditions indicated, and to appear as given in the picture. Consequently, the picture is a misrepresentation, a fraud, and a disgrace. A ship starting to sail away from an observer with her masts above his line of sight would appear, indisputably, to go down and still lower down towards the horizon line, and could not possibly appear, to anyone with his vision undistorted, as going in any other direction, curved or straight. Since, then, the design of the astronomer-artist is to show the Earth to be a globe, and the points in the picture which would only prove the Earth to be cylindrical, if true, are not true, it follows that the astronomer-artist fails to prove pictorially either that the Earth is a globe or a cylinder, and that we have, therefore, a reasonable proof that the Earth is not a globe. 49. It's a well-known fact that clouds are continually seen moving in all manner of directions, yes, and frequently in different directions at the same time, from west to east being as frequent a direction as any other. Now if the Earth were a globe, revolving through space from west to east at the rate of 19 miles in a second, the clouds appearing to us to move towards the east would have to move quicker than 19 miles in a second to be thus seen, whilst those which appear to be moving in the opposite direction would have no necessity to be moving at all, since the motion of the Earth would be more than sufficient to cause the appearance. But it only takes a little common sense to show us that it is the clouds that move just as they appear to do, and that therefore the Earth is motionless. We have then a proof that the Earth is not a globe. 50. We read in the inspired book, or collection of books, called the Bible, nothing at all about the Earth being a globe or a planet, from beginning to end, but hundreds of allusions there are in its pages which could not be made if the Earth were a globe, and which are therefore said by the astronomer to be absurd and contrary to what he knows to be true. This is the groundwork of modern infidelity. But since every one of many, many allusions to the earth and the heavenly bodies in the Scriptures can be demonstrated to be absolutely true to nature, and we read of the earth being stretched out above the waters, as standing in the water and out of the water, of its being established that it cannot be moved, we have a store from which to take all the proofs we need, but we will just put down one proof, the scriptural proof, that the earth is not a globe.